There you are now. Welcome back to the workshop. So on today's episode, I thought I would bring you along for stripping this gearbox. This is a straight cut, close ratio gearbox out of a race car that I'm working on, and all of the parts have just arrived in for the gearbox to be rebuilt. So I want to strip it down, get the casings off to the vapor blaster, and get them ready for rebuild. On the last HRE Uncut, I showed you another gearbox that was up on the bench, one that was going to be for that Cooper S engine that we're rebuilding, and there was a good bit of interest. More than one or two of you asked me to do a strip and rebuild series on the gearbox. So that's what we'll do. We'll run this alongside everything else. As this goes through its various stages of rebuild, I'll bring you along for each step. So first step in any gearbox rebuild is obviously to strip it. Before we get into this, I just want to tell you that we got some great news this morning. The engine that we stripped here, the Cooper S donor engine, so this series that we're going to do on rebuilding this Cooper S engine, we stripped it here a couple of videos ago, and we were asking the question as to whether we were going to get liners into it or not, because it was at 73.5. A couple of days ago, I brought the engine block to the machine shop. My fantastic machinist friend Martin had a look at it. We went through the catalogue of liners that were available, and we found a 74.2mm liner that existed, a spun cast iron liner that existed. We had a chat back and forward, and we reckoned we were going to be able to get that liner into that block, and the end result is going to be fantastic. So we're going to be able to get that motor back onto a standard 1275 bore. Really excited about that. So expect in the next couple of weeks. It's going to take a little bit before we're going to get to the next step of building that Cooper S engine, because we have to get the liners in first, and we have to do the first stage bore on the liners. And the reason why is because we have to make sure that we can actually get 1275 pistons into it. The liner is really close. The book quoted figure was 71.1mm. Now, my machinist has dealt with these liners for years and knows exactly how they work, and he said they normally don't come at that dimension. He said there's normally a 0.5 millimeter in it. So to get the standard bore will be really close after we press in the liner. So we're just going to wait and see, because if it's anyway close at all, what we might do is just go to plus 20 tau, which would be perfectly fine. Like a plus 20 tau on that Cooper S engine would be fine as well. But I'd love to do a bog standard 1275 if I can. So anyway, that's a bit of exciting news on the way for the 1275. So that is progressing nicely. We're going to strip this gearbox. So there's a couple of things to do first. We'll do this as real-timey as we can, with the least amount of cuts as we can, because I know you guys enjoy following along with me as I do one of these strips. And to be honest with you, these boxes come apart pretty easily. So the first part to come off the box is obviously the ancillaries. There is an order to take these ancillaries off in. This is just the engine mounting, so nothing critical there, nothing we need to check for or measure for. In fact, most things with a gearbox strip can be checked after it comes apart. There's very few things that you kind of need the box together in order to strip it. By the way, there's our tool for removing the pot joints. There's a video about that. We'll put a link to it up in the corner over here if anyone wants to watch that. One of our first times doing a pretty cool edit was on that video, so have a look at that if you haven't seen it. It's a good watch. I like to start by taking off the diff back housing, which is this guy, and then I work my way to the side casing, this side casing here. I think that's the order I like to work in. I'm using a windy gun, well, I'm using an electric windy gun here, because for stripping this particular box, there's no fittings here that I'm really worried about, or there's no bolt threads that I'm really worried about, because I'll be getting rid of all of these. I won't be using any of these fixings when I put this box back together, because I'll be changing these all for the high grade stainless steel fasteners that I use. So side covers next. Just a good idea to get that diff cover loose before you take the side covers off. have one already off. So we're just going to take this one off. Get in there with an extension. I'm using the electric gun because at least that allows me to get an idea of what's going on. So that's the differential housing coming off. So the differential that's in this is a Salisbury plate differential, one of the very, very early type of differentials. There's a good bit can be done with these. They can be wound up. We can increase the tension on it. We can do a few bits like that. So if you're interested in a video, bang it in the comments below and I'll show you how one of these diffs are retensioned and how we can affect the clutches inside the diff to make it more appealing on track. Or in fact, also if you had one that was too strong, there is a job you can do on it as well to back it off and make it less likely to give problems. Well, to make it easier to drive, say for example if it was on the road, probably wouldn't affect, wouldn't give you problems per se. Okay, next cover to come off is this end housing, and there is two things you have to be careful with on these end housings. One of them is you have to get this, this is the speedo drive is what's in here. You have to take that guy off in order to be able to get into the, just a little tap there, we'll get that guy off, to be able to get at that bolt there. All right, this Phillips here, we could use the windy gun, but we'll just try, yeah, that old trick with a tap of the hammer nearly always gets that one to come loose. If not, you could get the impact on it, and the impact would also get it off. So they come apart really easily. People are often worried about gearboxes. You know, they think there's some sort of black art in here, and hopefully today's video will dispel that myth. There's no black art in gearboxes. They're a bit like a jigsaw puzzle in that there's a lot of parts, but they really can only go together one way. And like any jigsaw puzzle, you have to start with the corners first. That's what we're doing, right? Take off this housing and then you can work your way back around. They always leak a drop of oil. That's, even if you wash them out and clean them, they still always leak a little drop of oil. Here's a bit of recycling for you. An old glass jar. I keep all my glass jars from, you know, I'm a big fan of strawberry jam. I keep all my glass jars because they're a real handy way of keeping track of the components for an engine. You can put the lid back on and put it in the box. Like we'll have a plastic box that we'll put everything into. These plastic boxes were donated by one of the channel's Patreons, and also a very good friend of mine, Gary. Thank you very much. He seen all my old broken up plastic boxes and donated me a load of these nice new fresh ones. So I look real pro with all my new plastic boxes. But yeah, the glass jar works great for it. You can literally just put all your bits and bobs into the glass jar, put the cap on, and you know that you're not going to lose any of them. As I said, I may not use all these fasteners again, but it's nice to know that they're there and they're handy if I need to get at them again. Okay, this side cover, the gasket on it can often be quite, well, it can be quite on there. So just in with a punch this end and a little tap just gets that gasket to come out. Don't do like I've seen on a couple of videos, fellas, drive a screwdriver in here to break that off. If you drive a screwdriver in there, this is aluminium, and this is steel. Rather than actually getting this, it will loosen that casing, but it'll also drive a wedge in there and distort those two mating surfaces. And then you'll wonder why you have oil leaks down the road, and it'll be because of that. You know, they're machine surfaces, so you want to make sure you keep them as machine surfaces. So already we're getting down to the meat and potatoes of this. Next thing to come out is going to be the oil cooler. I need to get my 7/16 socket. It's oil cooler. What am I talking about? The oil pickup pipe. It's been a long day today. Alright, this is a good point while I'm doing these last couple of ancillaries, just to mention thank you very much to all our subscribers. I really do appreciate all you guys, and I love reading all your comments and seeing all of you guys. All the new subscribers, I see you popping in there. Thank you so much. It's great to have you guys new to the channel. If you are new to the channel and this is the first video you've watched, you're most welcome. It's great to have you here. Have a look around. We have a good bit of content up on the channel now. Have a look around. We do lots of stuff, minis, Land Rovers, and everything in between. So have a little look at that. We've had the Rosengart apart. We did a bit of machine work actually recently for a 1930s Wolseley. So yeah, we do lots and lots of different stuff. So don't forget to have a little look around. If you like what you see, subscribe, join us on the channel, and hang out here in the workshop with me. To all of everybody watching the video, don't forget to hit that thumbs up like button, because that really does help us out and make sure that we get some more viewership out there. We're trying to get the channel to grow so that more people can see us, and you know, nobody in the world seems to know how the YouTube algorithm works, so let's just keep hammering away and see can we get more people on the channel and share the workshop with more people. Good news, the merchandise is going to be launched, and it is going to be launched on the 22nd of June. We will actually put up a little small video launching it officially, but it will be launched on the 22nd of June, which happens to be my birthday. And we will not ask of which year the 22nd of June it was, because I'm moving on. These grey hairs, they didn't just grow from working on minis. So anyway, I think that's a bit of good news, isn't it? That's coming along. So yeah, I'm excited for that. I'm excited for you guys to see the merch and to get it out there. And I'm also excited for us to develop other merchandises and get other stuff out there. Also, as I said, we're going to have the engine hooks, and I have a little surprise coming up that's going to be in the shop as well. So I can't wait to tell you about that little surprise. But that's coming up. Okay, give us 2 more minutes. We're going to do one last little maneuver, and then we're going to bring you back here and we're going to strip out the guts of this gearbox. Alright, so you're probably wondering what's going on. Billy set me a little bit of a challenge at the start of this video to see could I strip this whole gearbox in one go with no cutscenes and no takes. We did have one little cutscene there, but all we were doing was building up the air in the compressor because I forgot to do it before we started the video. So that's literally all we did. While it was building up, I did knock back the lock tab around here, which is the pinion gear, the bolt, the nut that holds the pinion gear and the main shaft of the gearbox. And I also knocked off the nose bearing that sits on here. So there's one clip and a nose bearing that sits on there. So I knocked those 2 off. Now, the next stage in taking this gearbox apart is to take out the anti-tubocking or the detent device. So there's a little spring in here. That spring comes out, and behind that is a ball. I've already taken the ball out because I normally lose them. So that's taken out. And then this guy, which is the detent. So it's just a little metal cylinder that sits in here. And it's going to fight me now. Took it out earlier on and it popped straight out. But we can't do a cutscene, so I'll show you the trick. Just use the circlip pliers. So that's a little handy trick. An open circlip pliers as opposed to an internal, and you can just put it in there and it grabs that little detenter and takes it out. Into the jar it goes, where it can be nice and safe. Now what that allows me to do is to change this selector fork, and I can roll it out of the way. So when I roll that selector fork out of the way, now I can move the gears any which way I want. So the way I'm going to move the gears is I'm going to put this one into first, which is over there. So that's that one into first. I'm using the wooden end of my hammer. You can see I've used it before for this. And I'm going to bang this other one into fourth. Okay, so stick that one into fourth. Hard to do when you're holding the box and hitting it with the hammer. So that's it, gone into fourth. Yeah. And by doing that, I've locked the gearbox up. The gearbox now doesn't want to turn. because you've got two gears engaged at once. And I'll show you why that works later on, but it is now locked, which means that I can get this nut and the primary gear off, and I can get the big nut and secondary pinion gear retaining nut off at the same time. So let's do that. So this one here on the front is 1 1/8 inches. He says the gearbox is locked. It was all going so well, and then he ruined it at the last moment. Now, there it goes. So that's that one. And that retains the primary gear. So in there with the little screwdriver. Pop that guy out. That's a lock tab. Now, whoever put this lock tab in the last time, I should have put a new one in, but they reused the old one. We'll be putting a new one in this time when we build the box. Back up again. That lock tab's in a state. So the drop gear or the primary input gear comes off. Next one to come off now is this secondary big gear here on the end. So we get in here with the somebody'd used Loctite on that. You can see all the white from the Loctite in around the nut there. Okay, and that will allow the pinion gear to come off. The Loctites creep down along that shaft, which is really annoying. This is why you don't use Loctite in this gear. But there it goes. It's coming off now. So this normally would just slide straight off the end of this shaft, but because somebody has put Loctite in there, which doesn't need to be used at all for this, but you know. Anyway. It's not like wheeler dealers where it all just pops off in one go, sure isn't. If life was only like that, huh? Okay, so now we have 4 retaining bolts. Now it depends on what casing number you have. If you have the later casing, this is the first of the 4 Synchro casings in rod change as opposed to remote, and it has 4 bolts. Later on, the Rover, when they were building the next casing on from this one, omitted that top bolt there. They got rid of that bolt because the casings used to crack across there and the bearing would open. So I suppose ideally for a race gearbox you probably wouldn't want to use this casing. Well, if I was building a dog gearbox for a full out race, I wouldn't use this casing, but because this is going to be going back together as a Synchro box, the Synchro gearbox, even though it's straight cut, won't generate anywhere near the forces that you would in a dog gearbox, so it'll be fine for that job. Now, next thing to do is to push out the lay shaft inner, and it just pops out the back of the box here. And what that now will allow me to do is, I have the oil pickup. They'll give you the big high angle view here now. So I have the oil pickup out, and I'm going to roll the lay shaft and the oil pickup all as one, and try and give you a view of the whole thing. Just wait 1 second. Move that there. Get these to roll up out of here without doing a cut. Oh yeah, hang on now. I know what's going on. I should just bend that guy a little bit. And we'll take this truss washer up here. So we just need to give ourselves a little bit of clearance here. So we'll take up that truss washer there, and that'll allow us to move the lay shaft around. And we get a little bit more clearance to get this oil pickup pipe out. So it is a little bit tight getting it out, but you just wiggle it around and it'll come out. Okay, so that is the lay shaft, and it has a bearing in either end, bearing in that end, and in fact this one has two, and one this end. All right. And then you have the lay shaft inner, which runs through there. Okay, last bit now to get out is the main shaft. And the main shaft, well, there's actually one more part after the main shaft. The main shaft has a huge big sear clip here, which is holding it. So let's see if we can make this go spring and springing across the workshop. Nope. First time on camera and all. Okay. Now we can knock it back out of gear. And then a bit of tippy tap on the end of the lay shaft, or the main shaft here. And that brings that guy out. That's primary input. Now the next one to come out is this bearing down this end here, right? This big double roller bearing. How do I get that out? There is a C fella that you can put in here that means you can tap the lay shaft that way. But years of doing this, I've worked out that if I just tap on the bearing itself there, it just walks out. We're replacing this bearing anyway, so we're not too worried about it. So that gets that bearing out that end. And now what will happen is I'll be able to lift the whole primary shaft out. We're almost there. Last to come out now is the reverse idler. And the reverse idler comes out and it's shaft here. Now there is a tiny little bit more stripping to do on the box, but it's nothing to see really. All it is there's a roll pin in here that you tap out and those two selectors come off, that selector and that selector, and then we'll be able to roll out this pin here. So now that you've seen that, I'll do it. If I can find the right punch. 90% of the time taken to take a gearbox apart is me trying to find tools. Where is it? There it is. Alrighty. So I'll tap out this roll pin. It doesn't be really tight in there. It's only a little small roll pin. And now what we can do is, this is the selector shaft now that we're going to get out. So the selector shaft comes out that way, which is that one. Selector forks comes up that way. That's our selector forks. And last but not least component is the selector pillar. That comes up that way. It comes out there, and then the reverse selector will come up after him. So put them all back together so we don't lose any of them. That's those. And the very last component, well, sorry, keep saying that, very last component. That's the selector shaft, and then this is actually the very last component. I think they put a bit of Loctite on this one as well. I'll give it. There she goes. Alrighty. That's the spigot that the selector shaft spins on. That, my friends, is one fully disassembled A-series gearbox. I'm gonna say in one take there was a cut, but I promise you we didn't do any loosening off or any messing. That was it, just in one take. So I hope you enjoyed coming along for that. And if you've stayed this long and watched all the way to this, thank you very much. I do appreciate everybody who comes this far. So, by the way, put down in the comments below, how long did it take me? I don't know, because I'm only shooting this video. So if you've made it this far and you watched it all, put in the comments down below at what time did I get the gearbox done, and you know, we'll have a bit of a laugh. I suppose the next one I'll have to do is I'll have to do it blindfolded, won't I? We might do that for 3,000 subscribers. We might do a gearbox part. Oh god, what am I letting myself in for? Alrighty, so I'm going to show you guys just exactly how a gearbox works now. There's bearings now there. Put that one into it. Okay, I'm going to show you how this works, and then we'll. Okay, so inside the Mini, this is what it looks like. Well, it looks like, yeah, it looks like this. Yeah. And the differential, it's the other way around, right? It's actually this way, inside in the engine. That's what it looks like inside the engine. Alright, so it sits like that. And then the differential sits over here. That sits on. And the pinion gear goes on there. So if you were looking at it in from the front, well, you'd be looking at it from this side. But the way you'd be looking at it. So this is if you were looking at it in from the front. So you've got your clutch on this side and your diff would be sitting over here, and that's the way it would be inside it. So you remember I said to you I was locking up, putting it into 2 gears. This is what I did. I put the first motion shaft there together, and I put, which is 4th gear by the way, and I put 1st gear engaged. So why did that lock the gearbox up? The reason that locked that gearbox up, we'll just take out those selector ones before I lose them. Yeah, they can all go over there. So why did that lock the gearbox up? The reason that locked the gearbox up is because this is actually one shaft. This is your input shaft. Then you have the second shaft, or the lay shaft, which runs across here, and the lay shaft is one piece. And then you have the 3rd motion shaft, the last shaft here, which drives the wheels. So when you put this one into gear, it locks that shaft to that shaft. If this is one piece and you put this into gear, then what you do is you lock that shaft to that shaft and that shaft to that shaft. So these are 2 different ratios from each other. So what they're in effect trying to do is spin this shaft at 2 different speeds. It can't spin this shaft at 2 different speeds because it's all one. So it locks the whole gearbox up and allows you to take off the bolts. Now, incidentally, if you put it into 2nd gear and 3rd gear, it would also lock the shaft up, but now you have a much weaker ratio. So you could damage the teeth on the gear as you were trying to open the nuts and bolts. So that is basically how it works. Things that we want to check for before we decide we're rebuilding this gearbox. So you've heard of people mentioning synchro hubs. There's an interesting one. Look, synchro hub just fell apart as we took it out. 4th gear synchro hub. So we definitely need to replace the synchros. Now, we'd be replacing the synchros anyway. But you've heard about people saying synchro. I'm going to show you how synchros work right now, straight off the bat, as a reward for watching all the way through to this end of the video. Let me show you how a synchro works. So inside here is a balk ring, and the balk ring is actually a clutch. Oh, we've another broken one. Wow, is there one in is there any in actually one piece that we can use here? All right, here's one. All right, so 1st gear fell apart as well. Look, into 3 pieces. It's the 1st gear. Okay, so how does this work? So what you've got is you've got the selector hub. So when you change gear in your Mini, you slide the selector hub either that way or you change the selector hub that way. And how it changes gear is the teeth inside of here mesh with the teeth around here. So these are called the dog teeth, okay? So these gears are spinning separately to each other, and when you put it into fourth gear, what happens is that slides over that and it joins that hub to that gear and drives the shaft. The problem is these are turning at two different speeds. This one's turning at engine speed and this one is turning at road speed. And what you need to happen is you need to slow the engine down and speed up the road side, or the road driving shaft. So what we have is what's called a Synchro hub, which is this piece here. This is called the Synchro hub. And what happens is you have a balk ring, and inside that balk ring is friction material. This stuff here, this is friction material. And what happens is, as we try and change into the next gear, the first thing that happens is as we press the gear lever forward, we shove that balk ring up onto that cone. So you cone there. So we shove the balk ring up onto that cone, and it creates friction and tries to bring the speed of the two shafts together. So as we press it, it tries to bring the speeds of the two shafts together. When the speeds match, the Synchro will change over. So it goes from there and it changes over, and then it'll drive and it'll go into gear. If your Synchro hub fails, if your balk rings fail in your gearbox, like these ones did, what happens is as you go to change it into gear, there's nothing to bring the two speeds together. So it physically has to happen by what they call dogging, which is not the thing you do in your car that other people like to watch. It is in your car, but basically what it is that the two teeth abut each other, and you get that crunch or that grind that you hear when you go to try and select gear. Now, if they're only on their way out and you gently select gear slowly, you give that Synchro more time to do work, more time to bring it up to speed. If it's broke like in this one in 2 or 3 pieces, what happens is no matter how slowly you change gear, the two shafts can't make up to the same speed, so they're going to crunch. Now, going up the box, there's nothing you can do about it. Lifting off, doing anything like that, there's physically a speed difference between the two. Going down the box, however, you can do speed matching, which you might have heard of someone mention before, heel toe. So as you're changing down gears, heel toe. What they mean by heel toe is with your toe you're pressing the brake, and with your heel you're pressing the throttle with the same foot. And the idea is you're bringing the revs up to match the speed of the road wheels in the gearbox. So if you've ever changed down gear abruptly in a car, say you're going along at 40 miles an hour in third gear and you're coming into a corner and you say, I'm going to slow the car with the engine, you'll put it into second gear and you'll feel that engine braking. One thing you'll notice is the engine's revs will rise up. What's happening there is the gearbox is spinning the engine and it's bringing up its revs. If you bring those revs up before you change it into gear, so say for example, you know if you're doing 40 miles an hour, you're going to end up at 3000 revs in second gear, then what you can do is before you go from third to second, you can bring your revs artificially with your heel up to that rev and then change the gear, and it'll be as if you are effectively being a Synchro hub. You're bringing the road wheel speed and the engine speed to match each other so that those two gears can easily slide over each other, and then when you lift up the clutch, the whole thing will drive. I'll show you in another video when we take a dog gearbox apart how that works differently to a Synchro box, okay? The good thing here is that what we want to check when we take this apart is to see what the condition of these Synchro hubs are like, and these don't look in really bad condition. There is some breaking up happening, but that's to be expected. It's a very hard surface. But for the most part, the Synchro hubs look serviceable anyway. So simply changing the balk rings here and replacing all the bearings, we'll put this gearbox back together and we'll get another go out of it. This guy will do 1 or 2 races with it probably this year, 1 or 2 races with it next year, and then more than likely he'll move to something like a dog engagement gearbox. He's going to build another engine for this car eventually, so he'll move to something like a dog engagement gearbox. Alright guys, I think at that we will call it a halt. That has been a long video, I know, but thank you so much for following me along here and watching me take a gearbox apart in real time. If you enjoyed that kind of a video, let me know and we might do more of them in the future. If you got bored out of your tree and you've been speeding your way through, tell me that as well. It's nice to know what you guys like and what you don't like, and I can, you know, tailor the videos to suit. Alright, I'll see you guys on the next one.